These fascinating, extremely rare colorized photographs show the courageous pilots in British and American aircraft that helped defeat Nazi Germany and the Luftwaffe planes who tried to stop them. The restored, vibrant images show a variety of World War II warbirds that played a pivotal part in the Allied war effort, such as the RAF B-17, the Handley Page Halifax bomber and the P-47, a United States fighter bomber. It also shows the Luftwaffe Messerschmitts, whose pilots launched its campaign of terror on England during the Blitz bombing offensive in 1940 and 1941. The snaps are also show officers in the Air Force and U.S. Navy, as well as British crewmen returning from death-defying missions, and members of the Finnish Air Force. The Luftwaffe was officially established in 1935, and the Condor Legion was sent to aid General Franco, which they did with devastating effect, in the Spanish Civil War. The German Luftwaffe claimed roughly 70,000 aerial victories, while 75,000 of their fleet was destroyed or significantly damaged. Of that, nearly 40,000 were written off. Their total air fleet production stood at just under 120,000 planes, with a personnel of 4 million pilots in service between 1939 to 1945. By the time the Second World War broke out, they were the most sophisticated, technologically advanced air force in the world. They were instrumental in the German victories across Poland and Western Europe in 1939 and 1940 as the countries in their way fell victim to the Blitzkrieg. After the surrender of France, Hitler turned the Luftwaffe against Britain, hoping to destroy the RAF ahead of a German invasion. But during the Battle of Britain, outnumbered RAF pilots successfully resisted their German foes. Graphic designer Nathan Howland from Brighton used his expertise to add color to the images and help preserve the memories of war for future generations to learn from. Mr. Howland, 52, said many of the images are extremely rare and have yet to be shown to a wider audience. To me, most of them encapsulate the dichotomy in the expression that there is beauty in war. It gives us an emotive and moving insight into the fearful altitudes these very young men faced and braved. In the midst of it all, there were these extraordinary battle photographers, armed only with a camera, who stole themselves from everything around them to bring their eye, the war and the beauty of nature together in profound moments. It saw my role to lend my skill set to honoring these moments as best I could, to hopefully provoke a more immediate sense of what it was like to be an airman in wartime. Mr. Howland added that a great deal of research was invested to make sure the photographs were in as good a condition as possible. Share this article, share, he said. Everyone loves a color image. They bring life, depth, vibrancy, energy and a richness that is lacking in a monochrome image. Colorizing allows us to see images in a completely new perspective. In many cases, it allows the viewer to see much more detail within an image than your eyes would otherwise perceive when looking at something in grayscale. I think it's a little bit of magic. My only wish is for people to enjoy the work, and if you look at a colorized image and can't tell that it was ever black and white, then that is the biggest flattery any colorist can ask for. Who were the RAF Bomber Command, and what did they do? When the command was founded in 1936, it was only intended to be a deterrent, but the reality when war broke out 3 years later was very different. Bomber command crews suffered incredibly high casualty rates. A total of 55,573 died out of 125,044. 4% mortality rate, 8,403 were injured, and 9,838 became prisoners of war. Most who flew were very young, and the vast majority were still in their late teens. Crews came from across the globe, from the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand and all corners of the Commonwealth, as well as from occupied nations including Poland, France, and Czechoslovakia. It took astonishing courage to endure the conditions they faced. Flying at night over occupied Europe, running the gauntlet of German night fighters, anti-aircraft fire and mid-air collisions. But it was not until 1942 that the Bomber Command gained a real sense of direction with the introduction of Air Marshal Arthur "Bomber" Harris. Harris was appointed as Commander-in-Chief of Bomber Command in February 1942, with instructions to start attacking German industry, much of which was located in large cities. His objective was to destroy Germany's industrial might and create a collapse in the morale of the civilian workforce, breaking Germany's will to fight on. Times were hard. Victories seemed distant, and chivalric notions of war fighting had been burned away in the fire of the Blitz. U-boats were roaming the Atlantic, sinking merchant shipping in an effort to starve Britain into submission. The prospects of success were uncertain. Morale among British workers had largely held firm in the teeth of prolonged attacks by the German Air Force. Harris, however, firmly believed that through a combination of improved aircraft like the Lancaster and Halifax, better training and navigational aids, and a ruthless will to press the attack, Bomber Command could knock Germany out of the war. In May 1942, Harris launched his first 1,000-bomber raid against Cologne. The scale of the attacks shocked Germany, but the country continued to fight. Further attacks did have a devastating effect on the Nazi war economy. Albert Speer, the German armaments minister, believed that a series of raids like that on Hamburg in August 1943, repeated in quick succession, might well have compelled Germany to surrender. But that wasn't the case. Other more specialized operations also took place. The famous Dam Busters raid of May 1943 shocked the world with its audacity, as Guy Gibson's 617th Squadron launched a daring raid on the dam surrounding the Ruhr Valley. Other attacks, like that on the battleship Tirpitz the following year, eliminated the German Navy's last major surface ship. Raids in 1944 and 1945 against German the fifth weapon launch sites were also a crucial defensive measure, helping to limit attacks from flying bombs and rockets on British cities. Bomber Command switched its attentions to tactical objectives in early 1944, helping to pave the way for D-Day, the Allied invasion of occupied Europe. It played a vital and highly effective role attacking infrastructure around the invasion beaches. Attacking railways, roads and other transport links created chaos behind German lines, preventing the defending forces from massing to repel the landings. The closing months of the war saw arguably the most controversial operations, such as the raid on Dresden in February 1945. in 4 huge raids by the RAF and United States Army Air Force. A firestorm destroyed the city center and killed thousands of civilians. The planners of the raid argued the city was a vital communications hub and needed to be targeted. The critics said that Germany was well beaten and the bombing was needless. The truth is that it was a time of total war, and ideas about the boundaries of conflict were very different than those we have today. Bomber Command did not win the Second World War independently, but the war could not have been won without their efforts. The RAF's attacks forced Germany to divert invaluable men, guns, aircraft and equipment to defend its airspace, effectively opening a second front long before D-Day. The young men of Bomber Command faced dangers that today we can barely imagine, all in defense of our freedom. Their sacrifice and extraordinary courage should never be forgotten. Source: Bomber Command Memorial.